Can Happen Friday. The art and cultural side of Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, welcome to Anything Can Happen Friday.
You're so excited, Grace.
Yes.
And of course, today we'll be talking about something that is not a recent trend, but is something that is, I would say, is an ancient art, not just an exercise.
Yeah, but then a lot of people, especially females, they have been practicing this, and then it sort of became a culture, especially in Asian countries. And I see more of institutions are established around this area.
Of course, we are talking about yoga, which is now become a global craze, and it's a very healthy and very relaxing way of exercising, but it's also very spiritual in a way. And because of that, we have a guest here to share with us on yoga, as well as to commemorate the International Yoga Day.
And then his name is Mohan Raj Gurubatham. He's a director and as well as the from the corporation communication.
So hi, welcome.
Yeah, just introduce myself again. I'm actually a senior professor at a university in Malaysia, and I am right now in the United States. It's 8 p.m. Central Time. I hope I'm loud and clear.
You are very clear.
And
right, so go ahead. Go ahead.
I think the first question is, why yoga? Why yoga is now becoming something that is a global phenomenon?
A very good question. Yoga, as you mentioned, I heard in your little discussion there, is several thousand years old, and it kicked off in India by a sage called Patanjali, Patanjali, who codified it. And these sages are seers or rishis, just like in China they had these seafoods. A rishi actually cognizes the impulses of natural law, but Patanjali was the first to codify it. It wasn't just something that he passed on orally, but he actually codified it. So that was around 200 to 400 Common Era. Now, fast forward 2,000 years to 2015, the trend of yoga, as you have observed correctly, has been increasing with momentum. It has become a rage, a fad in some senses, a trend, and in some respects, even a driver. A driver is something which is now institutionalized. So it is both a trend and a driver. Let's take the trend of it. It is very, very common to go to any major city in the world and you find yoga studios. Now let's understand what yoga is. And if I'm going too fast, you can always ask me to slow down and I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, sure.
Am I going?
Oh, this is very pleasant to hear.
Okay, cool. So yoga, it comes from, it's a Sanskrit word which means union or unite. So it actually unifies the mind and body. So we can be a little more scientific, like take a tad more inspection into what mind and body means. Now, I'm a psychologist. I'm a professor of psychology and global management.
Right.
So mind for me basically means the container of knowledge, our attention system, how we cognize, how we interpret signals, signs, our senses, how we organize this into information and knowledge. Yeah, but the mind also needs a physiological substrate, then the body, the nervous system. So yoga actually unites or unifies the mind and body with a goal of perfecting this coordination of mind and body, right? And so it has become a major trend for people to just want to develop their mind and body, never mind the spiritual aspect.
But why developing a unity between the mind and body is important? And why it is lacking now in today's modern society?
That's a very good question. So when the importance of unifying the mind and body is simply because we realize that there is wholeness in nature. And we are part of nature, and our mind and body are the first, most direct, most intimate level of our experience of nature. And the mind at its deeper level, I remember in a radio show last year, Eileen, I talked of transcendental consciousness, restful alertness, which is going beyond the mind to the source of thinking, which is pure consciousness, which in fact is the goal of yoga. So yoga's importance in unifying the mind and body is to restore normalcy, right? So we heal ourselves. So, and unity in the world is actually very much desired. I find it rather amusing to try and justify the need for unity because there's so much conflict. If just, we are part of nature, we are part of a family, our own family, we are part of a community, we're also part of an ecosystem on the planet. That means everything is connected and interconnected. So, no one or no nation or no community should be marginalized, alienated. We are all part of this wholeness. So yoga's goal really is the wholeness of creation, looking at unity in terms of diversity. And unity is not uniformity or sameness. Unity means thriving differences, respect and appreciation, in fact, love for the differences, and a higher order unification. In fact, this was the articulation of India's Prime Minister, and this is now going from a trend to a driver. Prime Minister Modi, when he became the Prime Minister in India last year, and his message was to the United Nations General Assembly in September last year, I believe. He said that yoga is really from India's tradition of Vasudeva Kutumbatam, a Sanskrit phrase which simply means the world is my family. And he said yoga is a gift of India's ancient tradition, but nonetheless it is actually universal in terms of its impact and application. It doesn't matter what culture or religion, whether you are traditional or modern, from whatever walk of life. So he has gone further to actually offer free yoga classes in India for their civil service. So coming back to your point about unity of mind and body, Prime Minister Modi says, yoga embodies the unity of mind and body, thought and action, restraint and fulfillment, harmony between man and nature. It is a holistic approach to health and well-being. It is not about exercise as what the fads and trends seem to just suggest, but to discover the sense of oneness with yourself, the world, and nature. Right, and so about 177 countries signed on for Yoga Day, including China. They had a big, massive event in Delhi in India and also in the University of Peking in Beijing and all over the world. In fact, in Times Square in New York, they had a big celebration. And the Secretary General of the United Nations, in other words, the chief, Ban Ki-moon, who's from South Korea, also kind of echoed the words of Prime Minister Modi. I shall pause here in case you have any questions. Yeah.
Yes, I do, in fact. Well, that is quite an insight, also depth when it comes to yoga. It looks like, and it sounds like, and perhaps it is true that it is more than a sport. It embraces all aspects of life itself. But my question here is, what actually triggered this yoga to perhaps become a culture of other nations, such as other parts of the Asian countries or perhaps the Western?
Yeah, I think from various sages from India, they traveled to the West and there have been yogis, and the most famous in our modern time, as I'm not that old, from the latter part of the last century and in the 21st century, is Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of the Transcendental meditation technique and movement. And he was one of those people who actually encouraged a lot of scientific research into yoga, which has a component of meditation or dhyana, which is part and parcel of yoga, transcendental meditation. And in the United States, the conservative federal agency, the National Institute of Health, has invested over $25 million into transcendental meditation, which is part and parcel of yoga, as cardiovascular therapy, not in terms of just curing, but also in terms of prevention of heart disease. And the studies have been going on for over 10 years, well documented, published in major journals, and first initially targeting African Americans at risk, people who are under severe stress in inner city areas.
Right.
So that is a major trigger or driver. In Southeast Asia, yoga has been traditionally kind of trickled into Indonesia, and there's another sage called Agastya who legend has it that he lived in India and Indonesia, It's part of, Indonesians know this very well. It's part of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata in the tradition. And at various points, it may kind of devolve into exercise. But now I think the restoration of the knowledge of it being very powerful in terms of mind-body coordination and the transcendental meditation aspect has triggered a lot of research. Over 600 studies, 600 have been published in mainline journals. Now, the more interesting part is in terms of unity in diversity, which is a message of yoga. And very fond. It is actually the ancient motto of India, where the whole world is one big family, respecting the differences. Unity does not mean you and I must be the same.
We always confuse. I always confuse with the two words unity and sameness. What's the difference?
That is not understanding that nature is diverse and nature evolves. It's progressive. So diversification, differentiation is part and parcel of the mechanics of evolution. I mean, if you walk into a garden, you want to enjoy the diversity of flowers. We can't say one flower is the most beautiful and we must make all flowers like this. What is the point of us being here?
That's true.
We celebrate the differences. The differences create a higher order unification. So it's not unity. It's not sameness. Now, so that is basically the goal of yoga, and there has been research which is powerful in the theme of unity. It can lead to conflict resolution. I did part of this research myself when I was a graduate student in England a long time ago when I was studying the new media. I looked at the British media covering conflict in the Balkans, and I had one group actually doing this practice of yogic flying, advanced transcendental meditation in Eastern Europe. The prediction was when a small number of these people actually practice this advanced technique of Patanjali, of yogic flying, the body hops. They will have a soothing effect on the environment, and you can measure the results. So the major landmark study was published in the Journal of Conflict Resolution, a very conservative journal put out by Yale University. The study was funded by Harvard and AT&T, the American telco. It looked at the conflict in Lebanon, in the Middle East. In the 80s, and they found the statistically very significant results using a time series methodology where you had a small group in Jerusalem and the coding was done in Egypt, in Cairo, and people were blind to the data, so that means there's no bias, and you make a priori, that means beforehand predictions on when you can see a cessation of violence or fatalities or reduction, which can be measured with hard data in terms of fighting or battles. And so this was published in the Journal of Conflict Resolution, and the editors were blown away. They said that, the methodology is impeccable in terms of the science of it, but the theory is something that is very unusual because classical physics, if you look at Isaac Newton's physics, which is something we respect, it has given us many good things in our life, it cannot explain how people meditating and doing this advanced yogic flying technique in one part of the world can have an effect. And it's a small group which has an effect on the majority of the diversity and incoherence. How does the small group practicing yogic flying bring about a major shift in consciousness where people become more positive? Time and space seem to be collapsed in one's own awareness and consciousness. So some physicists
very, very interesting, Dr. Mohan. But we'll take one short break and we will continue with the discussion on how it affects, yoga affects society as well as science.